Well, first, thank you. Now that we have the audio corrected, I wanted to welcome everybody. This is really an honor to be here. Thank you for the sponsors for making this possible, the organizers for making this possible. It's always fun to talk to a group, and this is a great group. I think I would echo the sentiment. Thank you for what you're doing. If people look back 20 years from now, I'll stand up for you and tell them I know some of you personally and that you are good people. So at a morning breakfast, I always try to tell myself, we just ate, it's going to be really good, people might be sleepy, what can you do? Some gimmicky thing to be interesting. So that's why I usually just shave my head and grow my beard out. So if nothing else, you can get a few laughs from that, and that's worth something. Then I always try to buy people off, because bribery is always good. So I have a few books of mine here, so the first people at the end of the talk, whoever answers or asks questions first, which always makes it look like it was super engaging, then that's how I bribe you to ask questions, and everyone will believe that it was a good talk in the end. And I ask myself sometimes, should I put good content in and make it practical and make sure that they can use it when they go home to their business or their family or their community? And usually that never works. So the first thing that I try to do is put cute pictures of kids, and that's a gimmick that usually works. So here's some cute pictures of children. What we're going to walk through today is just a basic concept, but I want to show you how simple basic concepts can be really helpful if you can remember them and apply them. And so what I want to take you through is what's called 3 stages of change, or psychology that people move through when they are learning something new. That's contempt, curiosity, and commitment. And this is a lovely face that maybe some of you will recognize when you go out there trying to sell your products, your services, or your ideas in the community. But contempt actually isn't just this face. It's actually 2 different kinds of contempt, and the word itself kind of lends itself to anger or frustration. And that's a very active kind of contempt, when people are looking at your idea or what you're selling as in opposition to something they're already committed to, and that's the reason you might see this face. But it's actually much more common when you're out there doing your job or you're working on something that you care about to come up against passive contempt. And what that means is more of like contempt of court, the legal term, where there's just some rules that exist, or there's something out there that you don't really understand, maybe you didn't pay attention to it, but you can still get in trouble if you're not aware of those rules, and you can be held in contempt by the judge. And so that's more of a passive thing that you might come up against, and it's harder to recognize, so maybe you'll appreciate this face in the future. You can say, well, at least I know where you're at, and I can provide a strategy that might be helpful. And the strategy that's ideal for people who are in contempt, who aren't open to your ideas, is showing. And specifically, a type of showing that is devoid of a lot of argument, anything that they can resist or combat against, but think of it like a model airplane, where you could just sit a model airplane on someone's desk and walk away, and they can play with it, they can explore, they can observe, they can make little airplane noises when no one's looking, and they can get used to it and say, okay, I kind of see how an airplane works. Now I'm interested and curious. I want to go ask somebody some questions. And that moves them into the stage 2, curiosity. And that is when they have seen something's possible that they didn't think was possible in the future, whether you showed them a tour of a facility, possibly, that they didn't think could be successful, whether you showed them a successful business plan that was actually working in another city, whatever that happens to be, suddenly they've shifted and said, okay, I used to think that wasn't going to work. Now I need to ask some questions because I don't understand this program and why it's successful. And specifically, you want to start sharing information at that point, but in a specific way, not the information you care about, but the information they care about, and from credible sources that they think are credible. And so it's really about knowing the person and sharing information that they're asking for, or that you can just use your intellect, or maybe ask some friends of theirs, like, what would they be interested in? And if you can provide them the correct information and share with them what they are looking for, they're going to start to shift again into another stage where they're contemplating, can I actually apply this in my situation? And that is the stage called commitment. Now, some people jump the gun here and they think, oh, commitment, time for the big sell. Now we're all in. We're going to get these guys. They're interested. And what actually you should back up and think, commitment is the absolute smallest amount of action they can take to test whether this will actually work for them. And so commitment is action, but don't oversell it, because what they're going to do is test, dip their toe in the water, and if it's successful then, it's not uncomfortable, they'll take more action. They'll expand that commitment because there's a lot of depth in the commitment stage. And you can scare people back into curiosity or even contempt. And so shaping is the strategy that works best in the commitment stage. And shaping is specifically, how do you shape the path or the experience that that person is going to have when they take their first action and make it as comfortable and successful as possible. Usually that is a taking away, not an adding to. It's taking away barriers, any obstacles, foreseeing what they might bump up against, making it easier for them. And we're going to show you some examples today of a very clear recycling example that you'll resonate with. But then I wanted to throw in an example too, a story of something very different, a community initiative that we worked on, so that you can see that same cycle of taking people through contempt, curiosity, and commitment with showing, sharing, and shaping is how it looks. So we'll jump in. And the thing that I'm going to use is recycling at the pump. That is a waste issue, it's a community issue, it's a local issue, so I hope that you can all see something in the story, and it's not one cycle, it's a reiterative process. And so, I'll give you a little background. I spent 3.5 years as the first manager of sustainability at Come and Go, and while I was there, we did have our first really big investment in our green building infrastructure, and we were certifying buildings with Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which you might know is not a perfect system, but it's probably the most popular certification for green building, and it covers a lot of areas. We were super excited about it, and then we found out, in essence, nobody cared. And by nobody, I mean our customer base. A lot of city councils cared, a lot of our engineers and design people cared, and a lot of our communities cared in general, the leadership. But when we talked to our customers on a day-to-day basis of who came through a Come and Go store, most of them didn't know we had LEED certified stores, and if they did, they couldn't tell us what that meant. And so we looked at sustainability and we said, a big part of it is yes to do the right thing, but we want people to understand our culture and why we're doing the right thing. So we looked at recycling, because recycling, as you may know, is the gateway drug to sustainability. It may not be everything about sustainability, but people see it, it's the first thing that they think of, and if they can participate in it, it's a very visceral experience. So we started asking the question, how do we get people to think of recycling and participate in recycling when they come to a Come and Go store? And those people don't stay very long. If they come inside at all, sometimes they're in there for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or they may just come get fuel and leave. So we started really looking at the pump, how could we get people, even if they weren't going to come into our store? And that's where we started. So the first stage was really looking at assuming that Come and Go as an organization was in the contempt stage. Not that they disliked it, but they had no program and had never tried at the pump recycling. More so the industry, we looked around, we had never seen any other convenience stores in any big way recycling at the pump. So the first thing we did is we took our people and we showed them what was in our trash. We worked with Iowa Waste Exchange, we took 20 some of our Green Task Force volunteers and our facilities team, and we just got out there and started digging through our trash. We let them touch it, we let them sort it, we let them put it into piles and say, oh, this is what's in our trash. And they were telling us, here's what we're seeing. And then we said we want to do at the pump recycling, so we started getting on the internet, we started looking at other conferences, we started talking to people and said, who in the C-store industry is recycling, if anybody, at the pump? And all we could find was one conference in Wisconsin. There was a slide deck from a presentation where 3 or 4 slides had some photos of convenience stores recycling. And most of them didn't look like programs we wanted to establish. The bins weren't that great. Aesthetically, it wasn't that pleasing. It looked like the contamination might be high. But we found one photo of a bottle-shaped bin, and it was in Owatonna, Minnesota. And so I hopped in a car with some of our marketing folks who were going to go there anyway to check out some of their private label stuff at a holiday. And we went up there. We got in the car, talked to their associates, went and looked at the bins, kicked them around, read the graphic, took photos, and then contacted the organization because we found out that the associates didn't really know much about the program. It was run by a third party. And that third party was the Recycling Association of Minnesota in partnership with what turned out to be a jobs program. So they had a facility called Jobs Plus in vocational rehabilitation. So we went then and toured their warehouse so we could see, what is this program? How are they doing the recycling? And it was adults with disabilities who had difficulty finding employment, and DVR, the Division of Vocational Rehab, really enjoyed the fact that the jobs both got them out in the community, working with local businesses, talking to local businesses, doing the pickups, and then also they were able to do a very simple but effective task of sorting. And so it provided good jobs for people. So knowing that, we told our facilities people we wanted to make a presentation. Not only we went and shared information about a successful model we had found, how difficult and that we didn't see a lot of other people doing it, but here are the photos, here's the Jobs Plus program, here's what we learned from their reporting, that they had seen really low contamination with their bottle-shaped bins, and that they had seen really good community relationships, which is a big thing for Come and Go. Not only in philanthropy, but just our community involvement in general. And the PR aspect of our sustainability initiative, we knew that sustainability with recycling was that tie to our customers, and so it would provide benefits if we could at least try to do something, commitment, asking for the minimal possible try of recycling at the pump. So what that roadmap looks like for a business sometimes, beta test is a word for doing the absolute minimum so that you don't risk a lot. And that beta test for us became store number 92 in Ankeny, Iowa, up on First Street. So in Ankeny, we had a general manager. One way we were able to shape the program to make it easier is Tony Havlicek really liked recycling. He already had come to us, pitched some of his own ideas, said that he was really proud of our sustainability initiative, so we knew he would be supportive. We also went to Waste Management, and we had talked to them about our ideas, and they had said, well, we've already tested some interstate travel stops with some of these bottle-shaped bins, and we've got some of them in the back. We'll donate 8 of these for the test. That way you don't have to buy bins. They also provided Keep Iowa Beautiful. Margot Underwood at the time was helping us do some tracking because she had worked with the bottle-shaped bins before. And so we had a lot of ways to ease facilities' concerns that this might not go well. The last thing we were able to do, or we had to do, was work with our waste provider because we didn't have single-stream recycling. And if we were going to take cans and bottles and recyclables out of the trash and split them up, we had to have single-stream service. So that was the first thing we did, was we put in the yellow bin for one of our dumpsters. So in that, we looked at commitment. We didn't want to create a program that wasn't robust enough to cover all of our recycling, and we wanted it to save us some money so that we could do more than just a beta test. So what we ended up doing is looking inside as well and putting some temporary solutions for a cash wrap recycling bin for our associates at the cash register, and then we went to the back room in the kitchen and put some bins there because we had a lot of kitchen items that could be recycled. So we tried to capture as much of it as we could to get us a positive financial benefit. And we had really good success. Not only did we do all of those things that I showed you, but we also learned a lot about what doesn't work because we had a windstorm pick up and blow all of our bottles across the street 3 times. And so the associates weren't happy. And so we had to put 50-pound bags of sand in the bottom. And that was a good learning lesson. Then we actually had a video of a truck driver with a big box truck filling up with gas, looking really longingly at our bin, thinking it was pretty cool, and then just clicking off the gas, throwing it in the back of his truck, and driving away. And so we added zip ties because we didn't want to keep losing our bins because they were so cool. So the zip tie in the bag came from the shaping. It's like, how can we make this not a problem for our associates? On that roadmap, then we went to the next step. We said, okay, how can we roll this out to several stores, and what would that look like in a pilot? That actually happened in Colorado, and because, and I'll tell you why. What led to that was we started taking our operations folks. We had gotten the facilities on board. That's really who we needed. But then operations with the associates needed to buy in if we were going to do this at more than one store. We didn't have a Tony Havlicek at every city. And so we started taking our operations people from the office out to store 92, letting them look and see the bins, talk to customers, talk to Tony, talk to the associates, go look at the new dumpster that we have single-stream recycling for, and just feel and touch the program and know that people didn't hate it and it actually was quite successful. After that, we did a presentation and invited operations to the facilities meeting and said, here's what we want to do next. We told them about the success of the program, and the success looked like a 6-month pilot where we had gone from no recycling to actually starting with 3 trash pickups a week and 1 recycling pickup a week. And in 6 months, we were able to flip that. We went 2 to 2 pretty quickly, and by the end, we had 1 trash pickup per week and 3 recycling. And that was very good for us. Not only did it mean that the associates or the customers were recycling, our associates were sorting correctly, and the bins were working, but we were saving money. And so we were saving enough to the tune of over $2,000 a year with that monthly service fee. And we estimated, even though we were able to do it for free with the installation, that it would cost about $900 to install. And that's a 5-month or less payback. In business, that's really good. And it was a beta test, and so we said, great, how can we expand this? We want to do more. And we told operations that, and they said, well, what's the minimum amount you can do next? And so we took Recycling Association of Minnesota, the only organization we knew that had launched that program somewhere else that we liked, and we invited them to come talk to us, and we took them to Colorado with us because they said, you should go where your customers are the most environmentally conscious, where they're really kind of asking for these types of things already, because you're going to get the best reception. And so we went on a little tour of all of our Come and Go stations in Colorado, and we actually went to a lot of DVR sites, the vocational rehabilitation centers, because we wanted to see if that jobs program could work for us. And a lot of them had recycling, they just didn't have any programs like this. They had more of large-scale recycling programs with smaller jobs that weren't cans and bottle sorting. But in that, we found Colorado Springs. Community Intersections was a nonprofit. They had a really good program. They didn't have recycling, but they had a really large facility with the space to recycle, and they were in need of more jobs. They had a shortage of jobs for all the adults and clients that they were trying to employ. So they were very excited, and what we did was launch with our first store opening in Colorado Springs because we had plans to open 6 or 7 more in the near future. It was a new market for us. And they wouldn't be overwhelmed with the 7 stores at once. They could build their program slowly, train their clients, and then grow with us. So what we were able to do, actually I'll pop back really quickly, you'll see the bottle wrap. We learned that we did have a high contamination rate at the Ankeny store, higher than we wanted. And so we redesigned that wrap to just be very bold, very simple to read, and it just said, recycle cans and bottles here. Because people still, you know, would stand next to the trash can and they would be looking at the gas can and just trying to throw something away here, and anything they could put it in was the trash. So we actually really improved our contamination with that graphic redesign. And we actually went to a 250-pound bag, sandbag model, because not from theft. We actually found out that the bollard system that we zip tie to didn't always work. Sometimes we had marketing signage on one side of the pump and we didn't on the other. So we didn't have zip ties as an option in a lot of places. So we just said, well, no one's going to pick up a 100-pound bag of sand and try to throw it in the back of their truck. So that seems to be working so far. But it was something that we were able to learn as we rolled out that second program. Now, on that roadmap, we actually learned something new. We wanted to parallel and test another similar program to see how well it worked, because we learned that the jobs program was an amazing community program, but we depended on a third party to start up a new program, and then we had to wait for them, and it was a very slow process. And we didn't know if we'd always be able to do that. So on our tour with Recycling Association Minnesota, we actually started seeing what was called a Dream Machine from Pepsi. It's an electronic kiosk that had all kinds of buttons and whistles. And we saw that at a lot of grocery stores while we drove around Colorado. And so we got online and we started doing research. What is this program and how does it work? And we found out it's very similar, where they target U.S. veterans with disabilities and do a lot of sponsorship of programs that help them, but it's an automated system, and it's really a partnership between several organizations and Pepsi. And so we called them in and said, would you give us a presentation? And leadership sat down with Pepsi and they said, here's our pitch to you. Here's what the program does. Here's how it works. They have their own goals of recycling, Pepsi, internally as a corporation, and they had very high utilization rates at grocery stores. So they shared all that information with us, got us all excited about the program, and said, we have waste management on the back end for service. We have greenopolis.com. We can coupon. We can take care of redemption issues in bottle bill states. And we propose 41 locations of convenience stores in Oklahoma. And we shaped that proposal and said, well, what would work for us is this. We think that Colorado is our best market. We're already trying something in the metros, and if we can continue focusing and fix our Colorado recycling program and really have a good system in the rural locations as well, it'll probably work anywhere, and so let's look at that. So we mapped out all of our stores, and you know that rural locations have transportation issues, cost of traveling to get that waste. And we sent their technicians to all of our rural locations. They went out, they did audits, they said, here's the locations that you can actually fit them. We have red boxes sometimes, we have LP tanks sometimes, we have ice chests. And so they just went out and said, can we put this at any stores? Do you have the electricity? The basics of the technical questions that needed to be asked. And then we pushed back and said, you do grocery stores, but we can tell you about our customers. Our customers spend 3 minutes in the store on average. Sometimes they never come in the store. Do you have anything that we can do at the pump so that they have that visceral connection with us? That's really the goal of us launching these programs. And so they said yes, and they gave us these beautiful square metal bins that we're not super excited about at the beginning, but they were a free test, and so we used them, and we started the program. Now, the Dream Machine program, we did all the things, chose the rural market. They gave us 9 stores that actually had a really good setup to test these Dream Machines. And then we implemented with customer at the pump bins and just really thought it was going to be a nice program, and we could track it. Waste management drivers were doing spot audits and visually looking at the bins as they filled up at the pump. And the kiosk itself, the Dream Machine, had internal reporting. So you could just churn out a monthly report or a weekly report to see how much it was being used. And luckily, with that reporting, we were able to see that it wasn't very successful. That kiosk wasn't being used, and grocery stores put them inside, whereas we had them outside. They were failing all the time because of weather and electrical issues. So quickly, we removed the kiosk, decided it wasn't going to work for us, and kept the at the pump bins to see how those would work. Now, that roadmap was actually a better and linear trip for us to stay with the Pepsi Dream Machine because Colorado Springs was going well, but it was as we opened a new Come and Go, we would launch with community intersections. So we left that one and stayed with Pepsi for a little bit. And we actually talked about Tulsa next. So why that happened was we went and took all of our general managers, our supervisors from the Colorado region to all these 9 stores. We drove them around. We showed them the general managers, the associates to talk to, saw the bins, saw the new recycling service in the back end, and really got them to see, yes, we like this program. And then we got great testimonials saying things that customers love the program. Our associates are really happy that we're recycling. All the things we'd hoped to learn in Colorado with a very progressive customer base. And so we were looking for that commitment by showing people what was possible. Now also, Pepsi helped because they're a national company, they had good marketing, and they came in and provided all the tracking from the kiosks program, from what they were experiencing in the rural locations with the pickups and the drivers, Greenopolis data, waste management data, and they believed us when we said we didn't like your bins, and so they said, let's switch to those bottle-shaped recycling bins. We had too much contamination. We think your bottle-shaped bins will work. We also said, well, our graphic works pretty good too. We think you should use that. But unfortunately, they had a 3-corporation deal between Greenopolis Waste Management and Pepsi. So at that moment, it was very hard and a long process to change the branded graphic. So we stuck with their blue and went to the bottles. Now they came and said, first, we love Colorado. We'd love to do it here, but you're already working with the jobs program. We also love Iowa. We've got a lot of opportunity there, but you've taken out the kiosk, and for good reason. We don't want to go into a bottle bill state with a non-redemption strategy because then it's going to look like we're politically trying to maneuver around the bottle bill. So what was left was Springfield, Missouri, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so we really liked Tulsa. We had a lot of great stores there and a lot of good supervisors that we thought would support the program. And so they came back and said, we also think that in Tulsa, we can try something new. We can split our distribution pickups into a 50-50 split. We can do some backhauling service with waste contracts, but we want to try half of those with our own products being dropped off. Can we pick up these cans and bottles ourselves, bring them back to our facility, and save time? Let's test that business model. So again, we were always trying to test what works. So they made another presentation to Come and Go leadership. They pitched the program. They said, let's do a 10-10 split. We'll start with 20 stores, and we'll see what Tulsa can do for us using the new bottle-shaped bin. With that commitment, we said, well, what you're really going to need to do if you're going to try a different pickup is our associates need to know clearly that why they're putting it in a different dumpster, because we just have been training them that they need to put it in this yellow lid dumpster. Now you have a different program. So 10 of the stores had to have totes, those large 90-gallon totes, so that with a big Pepsi sticker on it that said, you need to put these in here, we're trying a different program. And so to be nice so that they weren't upset, we also got them a nice roll-around cart so they didn't have to carry bags around the parking lot. And that really helped out because associates being upset with the program is never gonna fly long-term and expand. The other piece of the commitment is they quickly realized that yes, contamination was high, our graphic isn't that good, and so they were able to get permission to redesign that graphic, not to exactly what we wanted, but it technically wasn't our program at this point. And so they used our messaging and they designed a beautiful sticker that actually right at the small hole for that recycling bottle was something that caught people's attention with a visual and a statement. And the contamination quickly went down to about 2 to 3%, which is what we were shooting for. So with that commitment in Tulsa, we really learned a lot of things. We were able to have the dedicated totes. We were able to change the way our associates picked up and did the trash bag cleanups and sorting, because in the past we were using third parties and we really were starting to depend on our associates more and more. We also learned how the program would benefit from the graphic design, and those customer testimonials started pouring in, because for the very first time we started having what you call saturation of a market. Before we had one store, 9 rural stores spread out all over the place. And so it was hard to get people to think of Come and Go and recycling because they could go to one Come and Go and the very next one didn't have recycling. But we started to get a lot of positive customer feedback. The associates were hearing it, the general managers were hearing it, and so we ended up expanding that program to all 47 locations in Tulsa, and it was going very successful. The last part of the rollout is we decided that although Colorado Springs was successful in growing, we had shifted the showing in the contempt stage to actually the DVR, because we had helped start a third-party program. We started having their DVR programs across the state just go tour community intersections. So they took ownership of showing their staff because they could answer, how are you working with clients? They could answer all the questions we couldn't. And so we put our focus on, great, we'll continue working with you and we'll try to grow this program, but we want to grow recycling in the meantime, and we can always partner with the third party later. So what we ended up doing was checking out Des Moines. We said, well, it's our home headquarters. It's a great market. It's one of our largest markets. Let's try to do recycling here in Des Moines at the pump. And what we were able to do is show people those waste audits, because we had then gone into Colorado. We could compare the two and say, in Colorado with no bottle bill, we had a 50% contamination of recyclables at the pump with our customers. We thought it would be much, much less in the bottle bill state, but it was still 30 to 40% recyclables, often cans and bottles, in there that people were just choosing to, I'm in a hurry, I don't want the nickel, I'm throwing a perfectly good recyclable away in the trash. And so we said, let's target that. How can we just get that out of the system, knowing that we were starting to get customer testimonials coming in for Store 92, because it had been a couple years while we went off with Pepsi and these other programs. Our supervisors were still interested in the program. And so what we were able to do is go make a new presentation to our Come and Go leadership and say, here's what we want to do. We're a bottle bill state. We're going to keep our redemption program. Nothing's going to change, but we want to get those cans and bottles out of the trash cans out at the pump. And so with that, we told them about, again, the money we could save with Store 92, what saturating the market would look like, and how we might be able to increase customer count for people seeing us as a recycling company and understand that that's what we believe in. And our associates were going to have to take on the work of changing those bags. So we mapped out every store in the greater Des Moines area, and we found out that many of them still didn't have single stream recycling. So we spent 2 months getting single stream recycling with different vendors on different contracts so that we could just make sure we had the prerequisite for the program. And then we decided that we were now taking on the installation as well. So we had to design a video program that would teach vendors how do we install these, because we learned about the zip ties and we learned about the graphic wrap and we learned about the sandbags. So we had all these things we had learned that if we hired a vendor to install these, they would probably just do it the way that the instructions came with. So we had to recreate that, and that's Recycle Me Iowa was who we worked with to do that installation and develop the training videos. We also learned that the bag that comes with it automatically is a cheap little thin plastic bag, and no one had really told us this, but we found out later they were very unhappy with it because it would just barely fit the bottle, and as soon as you put cans and bottles in it, the weight would just collapse inside, and then everybody for a week would put the cans and bottles in, and it would just be gross. And so that first bag change was always terrible, and some people just didn't like the program because of that bag change. So we were able to install it ourselves. Literally, I was out there doing it, and like, yeah, this would be terrible. I wouldn't want to do this program either. And so we went through the stores and started the stores start ordering their own clear plastic bags, which just went right along with what they already do. Once a week, they already make an order. And so that solved a big piece of the program we didn't even think was a problem, and helped the associates like it better. And we had to do interior work. We had to do a visual because there's a lot of great pre-printed things about how to recycle, but Come and Go has very specific things that happen at the cash register. So we had a very specific cash register visual poster of what can be and can't be recycled, and then we had a very specific kitchen poster of what can and can't be recycled, and we put them up in all of our stores and trained our associates. And I also went around and gave presentations at all the regional supervisors meetings so that people would know, here's how you can support your general managers, and here's how they can support their associates when they have questions about recycling. So that's a long way of looking at the roadmap we took. And every level that you see there, the beta tests, the pilots, and then the full rollouts in cities, every one of those had to go through a cycle of showing, sharing, and shaping every time, because there was always a new level of resistance every time you try to do something new. And using that model, very simple model, the results were that we went from absolutely zero recycling at the pump at Come and Go when I arrived to 112 locations, which was 1/4 of all of our stores in 11 states, which was in 3.5 years was pretty good, and I hope it continues to expand. But we developed a training program so that it could expand with any vendors that we worked with, and we had 146 of our stores with single stream recycling, because that's the prerequisite that has to happen before. So now there's a whole initiative just to get single stream so that we can layer on top of it this at the pump recycling program in the future. And the thing that I always get excited about is what's bigger than that. Pepsi worked with us, and they're a national and international company. As soon as they left Tulsa, with the work they did with us, they expanded that program in Texas, and they took it to other states, and now they're able to do at the pump recycling with convenience stores all over the US, and they've tested what works, distributor pickups versus backhauling. What's the graphic wrap need to look like? And so those are the things that really can come out of it if you do that kind of slow, tedious testing and working, but the expansion continues to this day. Community example. To show you that it's not just recycling, I want to show you a quick example, I think we have time, of group microloans for women in poverty. This is something that I'm passionate about. I work in Des Moines. Most of my work, even before Come and Go and now still today, is really about Iowa and the greater Des Moines area. And this was for Central Iowa. And I did help found a nonprofit, Urban Ambassadors, in 2008. And what we worked on was launching new projects in the city and getting people engaged in sustainability of all kinds. And one of our events was a financial security event on the social side of sustainability, that people need to be able to manage their money and have financial security. And we did an event with local experts on managing your money. We had a big dinner, and it was across from Johnson's Theater, because the company Results, or the organization Results, and Iowa State University had screened a film that we really wanted to see, and it was called To Catch a Dollar. It was about Grameen Bank, a group in Bangladesh that years ago started group microlending for women in poverty. And it's an amazing program, it has a great success rate in third world countries, but what we didn't know in the film, they talked about it now is in the United States, and it's actually working for people in poverty in the US, in communities, in cities all over the country. And we were incredibly blown away by that, and our organization, our board, and a lot of our members said, let's create a project team, and let's bring Grameen Bank to Des Moines. Simple, that should be easy. What we found out later was it's not as easy as we thought. Omaha, we found out that our team had 3 social service organizations on it. They all got together and did a tour where they drove over to Omaha, because it was the newest branch of Grameen Bank, and they talked to the staff. They talked to some of the clients. They watched them go out and run some of the groups of how they do the loan collections every week, how they give them the financial literacy training that they need. And so they saw that, came back, reported to us, and said, we really need to let Des Moines know about this program. We think we can do it. So we rented out the Drake University Olmsted Theater, called the Bulldog Theater, downstairs in the basement, and we planned a big event about showing that film, but not in Johnston, kind of in the heart of Des Moines. We invited student groups, faculty, administrators from the university. We invited all the social service organizations that work with people in poverty. We invited local businesses that sponsor programs like this, potential funding agencies and foundations, and we packed that theater with about 250 people, and we showed the film. Now, the film's beautiful because it actually talks about this program working in the United States, and so it did its job for us. But we also had a panel, so as soon as the movie ended, we had about 5 Iowa experts on microfinance up on the stage sharing their stories and then taking questions from the crowd. People were super engaged. We said we're going to start a Facebook page. We want you all to join the email list, stay engaged, and we want to launch this program. And so the very next step after the film screening and the panel is we really wanted the community to buy into this idea. And we had a lot of people sign up for that. We had a lot of people join our Facebook page. And the best thing that came out of it was that minimum viable commitment and what action can you take. And we had the Latino Forum for the Urban Core. They were supportive of the Hispanic community, mostly downtown, but also in the urban core. And they're part of the committee of the Des Moines Partnership. And so they're really taking the leadership on how do we enliven and get empowerment for the Hispanic communities. And it was shown in the film that Hispanic communities, it worked great for that program. The community aspect of the group microlending just really fit with the familial culture of the Hispanic community, and they were just very responded well to group microlending. And so they also had Iowa Microloan at the film screening. They've run microlending programs, very different ones in Iowa, but they had a lot of experience, and somebody called Iowa Community Capital, turns out already had the IRS designation for a nonprofit that could give loans to people in poverty. So we had everything we needed, and we moved on to doing a feasibility study with those 3 organizations of Central Iowa to see how big of a program could we sponsor, what kind of demographics could we serve, and then we opened an office on Forest Avenue this year and started giving loans to women in poverty. And so that is Solidarity Microfinance. It's a program of the Iowa Community Capital. That took 3.5 years to get done, and it was a slow process of going through those 3 C's and just doing that work, making sure we were providing people with the information they needed. And that program now has hired staff, a young lady named Anna Mancibo, and we actually were able to partner with Iowa State, who did the original documentary 3.5 years ago in Johnston, and Results, and they helped us hire a Grameen Bank consultant who was from Bangladesh and who had gone around the world helping start those programs to come to Iowa State University, teach about microfinance, and work as a consultant for our program in Des Moines. So it all worked out very well, and the mayor did the ribbon cutting just this year and had a big event with clients that were getting loans, with sponsors of the local banks and the foundations that had helped us start the program. And using that 3C model, we were able to start the Solidarity Microfinance program, which you can go check out today if you just Google it, or solidaritymicrofinance.org. And not only have we opened our office, but they've given 10 groups of women, 5 women in each group, loans of about $500 apiece that they will pay back and then have access to higher loans after that. And they have a goal of getting 200 loans reached by the end of the year in December. And so that is a program that pays back at 98%, which is way higher than conventional lending, and it's a social dollar. So if you give money to this program as a bank or any other institution, what people love about it is that money sits there, comes back at 98%, and then gets recycled back into the community to loans to women, to start businesses, to become financially independent, and to work their way out of poverty. And so it's one of my favorite programs we've ever done, and I'd say we use the exact same model of how do we go through this process of taking something people aren't familiar with, that we want them to adopt, whether it's a product, a service, an idea, a program, and we just applied those strategies in order over and over and over again. And with that, that's how we move from contempt to curiosity to commitment. And I want to ask any specific questions that you have, and we will talk forever until they kick us off, and that's my talk. Don't forget, I'm bribing you with books.
Get one of your recycled bottle bins at the Come-Go in your area.
It's a great question, and I have to first premise this with, I don't work for Come and Go anymore, and I'm a big supporter of their program, and if you talk to Come and Go, Sarah Karofsky is their manager of sustainability, and Jeff Smart is their facilities contact who really controls all the waste contracts and would probably be the person, Jeff and Sarah. You're very welcome. Get this woman a book.
I realize you don't work for Come and Go anymore, but you spoke to one of the benefits of this program was increasing your customer base. Customers willing to come to your store over, say, a competitor because you're more green forward in the recycling effort. As an educator, I run into this question an awful lot. And I have a lot of people say, why aren't there recycling bins at the gas stations? Because we travel and that's when we use those water bottles, and then mom and dad makes us throw them away because it's convenient and there's clean the car out. Can you speak to how did the customer base increase? Did it increase? Has there been any study on that yet? Are you pulling customers from competitors because of the green initiative and the recycling at the pump? And it's an interesting thing to me because in my local area, they're not at the pump yet either at Come and Go. And I would love to see that because my answer to that question is, man, that would be awesome, but how do you go to a company, even if it's not Come and Go, and start that conversation with them? You know, because they see dollars and cents right away.
Yes. Well, I would say, and it probably saw it in the presentation, that was not the strongest quantitative data that we could find. It was definitely something we talked about, and we enhanced any of our presentations with the testimonial data. And what was difficult was how do you track that? Because we can definitely track customer count. What we couldn't track was, is the recycling responsible for the customer count? Because what we change in a convenience store is everything, every day. And sometimes the marketing has changed, sometimes the products we offer have changed. And Pepsi did a very good study on their own. One of the things that we did as a control inside the stores with Pepsi is they were able to look at their distributor numbers of how much Pepsi products are we selling inside the store when we add Pepsi branded recycling bins at the pump. And versus a control group there's 10 stores or 20 stores that had it and 27 that didn't, they actually saw an increase in sales when in the recycling groups where they saw a decrease in sales in the non-recycling groups. But that was really for them on their numbers. They were able to track how much Pepsi are we selling. We're selling 400 and some different products from 400 and some different companies inside the stores. We really didn't find an accurate way while I was there to track, are we getting more customer count? What we saw was, are we seeing an increase in comments? Are GMs reporting back to us that people are talking to us about it? And what we used it for mostly as a lever is to build that sustainability story. When we went out to city council members, real estate developers, city engineers, to let them know that we did care about sustainability, we were serious about this program, and they were the ones that were more receptive to it because they had clear decisions that they had to make, and whether we could work with them or not on our sustainability program was more of a measurable quantitative data, and we just didn't have the ability to isolate customer count specifically to when we put the recycling bottles. It was always in the presentation, but we always had to show that we thought we could save money as well as increase customer count, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it actually does.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples, some examples of the businesses that have been started with the 10 group of 5 women that you provide loans to already?
Yes, I would say most of them are artisan businesses. They work out of their homes, especially because the program is a small stair-step program where they get about $500 and they can grow to $1,000 loans. I think it goes up to a max of $6,000. And the intent of the program is to take the unbankable into the banking system if they want. And so it's a stopgap of getting access to capital where you have no credit history, you have no bank that's willing to give you a loan, but this program will. And so most of them start in an at-home business, whether it's some are jewelry, some are baking, some are delivery services, some are sewing. I mean, there's so many. One woman's trying to start a community center in her community and wants the money to rent a facility and then to start to create community events. And it's really about the network of those 5 women trusting each other, meeting once a week, and discussing their business ideas together with some financial literacy training. But it's the peer network with zero collateral that makes the program work, where they're able to not get a higher loan unless they all support each other in meeting their payback of the first loan, and that's their collateral, is they know that they want to get access and work their way out of poverty with a business idea so that they can build their credit and then continue their business after they're done with the Solidarity program. But they're mostly at-home businesses when they start, but they often grow into shops or they want to get an office. But that's a mature group that has gone through the program, and we're in our first year, so most of those fit in the first category.
Are you aware of any national or regional convenience stores that copy your program or showing interest in it? Or
Texas, Pepsi, what's funny is you can always allude to who you work with as a vendor, but you're not supposed to say. And so people will say things like, there's another red convenience store that we're working with that you might have heard of, and but they don't say those names. They've alluded to different chains, but I would say that some of the biggest national chains are probably the ones that Pepsi wanted to work with. And because we were smaller, they could get in with us easier, do the test, but they knew that they wanted to expand their program nationally with someone who might be green and have millions of locations all over the world. And so I'm guessing that they are one of those bigger chains that has a national footprint, whereas we have Come and Go has 11 states in the Midwest. But if you go check out PepsiCo Recycling, I'm guessing they have more information on it.
Can you speak to the issue of producer responsibility and if that was a driver in terms of PepsiCo's decision to participate in this, or was it more of a PR grab? Not to sound cynical, but just kind of wondering.
Well, I can't speak accurately, but I think that you would see a lot of factors why a program like Pepsi would have their own internal recycling goals. There'd be a lot of influences. I'm sure that and the people that I worked with, coming out of their Chicago office who ran the recycling program, there's just a lot of passionate people who care about recycling, and that's why they got hired. I think from different directions you'll see policy changes, producer responsibility, either actual implemented rules or concerns that there might be rules coming down the path, so they would start programs like that. All those factors probably played into it, and the people I worked with directly were the ones who just needed, personally, that was their passion. They wanted to figure out recycling, and they really had a lot of experience. And so I could name some folks. Brian is the one I worked with the most, and Miller. But it's probably, just like in our program, there's going to be people there for different reasons. And the goal, in my mind, is not always to figure out why it's not happening, but what are the circumstances that will change that behavior. If people join it for a policy, I'm happy. If people join it for the money, I'm happy, because I'm in it for the recycling. And so as long as we're all getting recycling done, that's what usually I focus on. And then I never get upset, because you look at me 10 years ago, I'm a much less calm young man. So I was a hothead who didn't get things done very effectively, and I feel like I've learned a lot from people and mentors in my life, and it's just, I sleep better at night and I get less uptight.
how much time did you spend to complete the program?
I worked on recycling probably 3.5 years of the 3.5 years I was there. I would say it wasn't until 6 months in that we found an actual C-store photo of someone recycling with that bottle-shaped bin up at Holiday in Owatonna. So I was onboarding. It took me about 6 months before we actually found a recycling excitement around recycling that we could test something. So maybe 3 years, not 3.5. But it was a nice, steady work from that pilot, or from the beta test to those 2 pilots to those 2 rollouts. It took three years of good work.
I understand that we got a lot of partners in this, but do you know, I guess I'm a dollars and cents guy, do you know what these bins are running on every?
The bins themselves, you're going to have a volume benefit if you buy a lot of them, like Come and Go, but I believe they're around $100 a piece. And there are options. We went with the black because they were 100% from recycled material. Sometimes the black isn't as good because it definitely captures the heat, but we thought it would be we didn't really like the silver. There's an option for silver. Aesthetically, it didn't look as sharp on our sites, and we also wanted to use a recycling bin. We thought that that would fit with the intent of what we were trying to accomplish. But yeah, I wish I could, right off the top of my head, remember. It was like PFE, I believe. It's a vendor out of maybe Chicago, but there's not a lot of these companies out there, so I think it's something like PFI or PFE that sells those bottle-shaped bins. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone again for all the sponsors, the conference organizers who made this possible, all of you for being here. I can't imagine that the tours were anything less than amazing, and I even saw a pub crawl all mapped out, so I think you'll have a really good time, and I appreciate you having me, so thank you very much.